Okay. So last week we looked at ecological terms, what ecology entails. Then we're able to narrow down to abiotic factors. We looked at them as the non-living parts of a habitat, and they include all these that you can see: light, temperature, rainfall, relative humidity, wind, pressure, degree of salinity, hydrogen ion concentration, slope of land, altitude, carbon dioxide and oxygen concentration, concentration of pollutants, and turbidity and depth of water. So last week we looked at only three of these. That is light, temperature, and rainfall. We looked at light, temperature, and rainfall. So for today's lesson, we are going to continue with the rest. First, starting with the relative humidity, then wind and pressure, and so on and so forth. Okay. So as I said, we'll start with the relative humidity. Now, as the the term gives us, we can define relative humidity as the measure of the moisture content of the atmosphere. The measure of the moisture content of the atmosphere, or moisture content in the atmosphere. Now, humidity affects the distribution of organisms such that, one, we look at how this moisture content in the atmosphere affects organisms. How humid your environment is affects you where you are. Now, one, when relative humidity is high, plants are usually plentiful. But when it is low, only specially adapted plants can survive. Now, this statement is simple. When the humidity, when you have high moisture content in your atmosphere, survival there is easy. We all enjoy place where there's high moisture content. Now, the point where the moisture content is on the low, very low, only specially adapted organisms can survive there. Examples are, you can have xerophytes. Now, this plant, this organism, that plants, survive in dry conditions. So, example, the desert. Examples of these xerophytes, you have cactus. Cactus. They, they survive under dry conditions. So when you are living in a humid place where conditions are very dry, only these plants, they adapt themselves to situations there and survive. So when you are living in a place where the place is very dry, you said you can say that you are under the relative humidity around you is very low. Two, when humidity is high, the rate of water loss, that is into bracket transpiration in plants. Plants lose water through the process called transpiration. Then sweat. So we are comparing the plants and ourselves. So when humidity is high, the rate of water loss is low. But at the point where humidity is low, is low, there's high rate of water loss. So there's high rate of transpiration, and you start sweating. So when you are sweating, or you are at a place where the environment enables you to sweat, means that there is low humidity where you are. So when the humidity is on the high humidity means that what? There's the rate of water loss is what? Is reduced or is low. The third point, plants develop waterproof covering, that is in the form of cuticles, to prevent this water loss. So when humidity is on the low, it gives you the next point. Plants, they develop waterproof covering, so they lose water, or sorry, they form a covering called a cuticle that prevents water loss. Then the next point also buttress or moves or deals with the point two. When humidity is low, the skin acts as a resistant barrier. We human beings, our skin acts as a resistant barrier. Then birds, they use their feathers. Reptiles, they use scales to prevent or reduce this water loss. So that is what you have for relative humidity. Now, humidity is measured by a hygrometer. Humidity is measured by a hygrometer. Now note, this is not hydro, but hygro, Hygro, not hydro. Humidity is measured with a hygrometer. Specifically, you're looking at the wet and dry hygrometer. That is what you have in your image beside the slide. Now, the wet bulb thermometer measures the temperature of water vapor in the atmosphere, and the dry bulb measures the temperature of air. So you can see in your diagram, you have dry and wet. So the wet measures the temperature of water vapor in the atmosphere, then the dry measures the temperature of the air. Now, this relative humidity using the hygrometer is measured in percentages. Relative humidity measured using the wet and dry hygrometer is measured in percentages. So I want you to always remember the relative humidity is the moisture content in the atmosphere. Put that in your head. It's a measure of the moisture content in the atmosphere. When humidity is on the high, we tend not to lose or we tend not to lose water. But when it's on the low, we tend to what? To lose water. So have that idea in your head. Okay. Now the next abiotic factor is the wind. Wind. The next is wind. 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 Okay. Now, I would like to test and see. You've seen air there. Air. I should have waited to know suggestions and definitions of what wind is before giving this, because I've had exposure where I ask questions about differences between air and wind, and they give the same definition for that. But since I have already shown you what wind is, I would continue. So air is a mixture of gases, we all know. Then wind is air in motion. So the direction of air is wind. So wind is air in motion. Now, every organism on Earth is affected by wind in one way or the other. Now, being it in direction or the strength of the wind. So organisms are affected in their habitat by the direction of the wind or the strength of the wind. Now, when these organisms are affected, how are they affected? One, this wind influences the rate of evaporation of water, of ponds, lakes, and seas. So the wind forms a basis that influences the rate of evaporation of water, surfaces of ponds, lakes, and sea. Now, when the wind, you have this strong winds, it also increases the rate of transpiration in plants. That is, it influences water loss in plants. Again, this same wind helps in pollination and dispersal of fruits and seeds. If whether it's strong wind, uh, not moderate wind, or you have let me use the word low wind or weak wind, it helps in pollination, whereby there's a transfer of mature pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower, and also dispersal of fruits and seeds. So especially seeds or fruits that have they are lightweight. They have lightweight. You have the cotton fruit, very light in weight, so it can be carried from one point to another. The next point: strong winds affect the velocity and direction of some flying animals. Example: insects. So strong winds, you have this. Let me use butterfly. Even let me use the birds. Sometimes when the wind is strong, very strong, when especially when it wants there's we are suspecting heavy rainfall, then these strong winds, they are able to be these organisms are not able to control themselves in the wind, because the wind becomes stronger. The wind that is blowing is stronger than what the how they could pass through the wind. Now the wind is giving the direction, and they are moving towards the opposite direction. So at a point in time, because they cannot move through that medium, it's either they suffer or they change their course. That's their direction. Now this same strong wind can also cause soil erosion, breaking of branches of trees, and uproot plants. That is strong winds. I don't know who has seen some before, who have observed strong winds destroying even properties. These winds they can destroy properties, they can uproot plants, they can uproot branches of trees, they can also cause soil erosion. So wind is forms one important medium through which organisms try and survive under. They try to adapt and survive. It forms the non-living aspects in the habitat. Okay, so as I said, wind it affects organisms in their habitat based on their direction and the strength of the wind. So there are two instruments used to measure the intensity of the wind. Now we measure wind by the speed and by its direction. Speed of wind is measured with anemometer. Then the direction of wind is measured with the wind vane. Wind vane. So as you can see on your left, from where I'm talking from. From my left is an anemometer measuring wind speed. Then on my right, you have the wind vane measuring wind direction. So as you can see, the anemometer, you have a hand holding it, so it's handheld. Then to know the direction of wind, it's measured. There's a scale for you to record. But with the wind vane, it just shows you the direction of wind based on the cardinal points. That is west, north, south, and east. So this gives you the idea about wind. So remember, wind is air in motion. It's measured with anemometer, the speed of wind, then the direction, wind vane. Okay. Any questions from this point? Any question from this point? Okay, I'll move on. Now the next abiotic factor is pressure. Pressure. Simple definition: pressure is force by area. So pressure is defined as the force acting on the unit surface area. The force acting on the unit surface area. Now, pressure also acts on fluids. It acts on fluids, that is air or water, on their surface. So we have pressure acting on the air and pressure acting on water or on the surface of water. Now, air pressure in the habitat changes from time to time with changes in weather conditions. Now, it is affected by altitude, that is height above sea level. Now, pressure on organisms normally is influenced by their environmental condition, how they are in the environment, how they are in their particular locality. Now, their weather conditions is also affected or influenced by their altitude, that is where they are, the height of where they are above the sea level. Either they are on a mountainous region or they are below the mountain, or let's say at the base of the mountain. Now, extremes of pressure can result in habitats sparsely populated. Extremes of pressure can result in what? Habitat sparsely populated. Now, this means that the population will be on the low. Population of organisms at a particular habitat will be reduced because of extremes of pressure. Now, let's take it to a point where you have a particular locality or habitat. Then you have more organisms than the habitat can contain. Now, that is a form of pressure. Now, again, this pressure can be affected by their what? Their weather condition, harsh weather condition. It would make them what? Leave where they are, find a new habitat, a new locality, a new habitat what? To adapt and survive there. Now, you have examples: high mountain peaks and depth of seas where temperature are also what? Low. So you have mountain peaks. Normally at the peak of the mountains, organisms are not really are not normally there because of uh, uh, the pressure on oxygen found there. We'll explain that when we are doing altitude. Then depth of water, we'll explain that one. We're also looking at depth of water also. But all you need to know is that at this point in the habitat, temperatures at this region are normally on the low, causing them to have reduced number of oxygen. So surviving the organisms have to adapt to that situation before they can survive there. Now there's less oxygen at high altitude, so native animals adapt to compensate for this. So as I explained, so places where there's high altitude at the peak of mountains, now local animals have to adapt to that system to be able to survive. Now, at the point where animals are not acclimatized to these conditions, they may find breathing difficult and fatigue quickly. So because conditions there are not favoring them, they also have to try to adapt. Now, when they are trying to adapt, it may take time. Some taking the time, some may die. Some may try to survive. Some may not even survive, and others will try hard and leave that particular environment to a different one so that they could be able to survive. Now, this is what pressure, we will say pressure on organisms. Now, you can likewise compare this pressure to the pressure that you go through, in quotes, pressure that you go through in your daily life. Okay. Now, air pressure is measured with a barometer. Barometer. So as you can see, the image there is the barometer that measures atmospheric pressure. Let me put it that way. The instrument you are seeing there measures atmospheric pressure. Pressure in the atmosphere, pressure in the air. Now, this pressure is measured in Pascal. That is the unit of measurement, Pascal. PA. That measures the unit of what? Pressure. Okay. So look at the next one, degree of salinity. Degree of salinity. Degree of salinity. Now, this is the saltiness or amount of salt dissolved in a body of water. So salinity is the saltiness or amount of salt dissolved in water. Simple definition. Salinity is the saltiness or amount of salt dissolved in water. Now, an important terminology that you need to understand is osmotic balance. Now, regulation of water content between organisms and their environment is osmotic balance. I don't know whether we are having Form 1 students here, but even if you are in Form 1 and you have started your electives, you should know what osmotic balance is. I'm hoping by now you should have done transport of materials in and out of cell, because you definitely do cell. So you do diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. So you are supposed to know what osmotic balance is. But you should also understand that in simple terms, is a regulation of water content between organisms. So we are talking about water. So we are using aquatic organisms and their environment. So regulation of what? Aquatic organisms and their environment is osmotic balance. Now, this salinity controls the distribution of organisms based on how they maintain this osmotic balance. How? One, let's look at these freshwater fishes. Now, when I say freshwater, in the aquatic habitat, there are two types. There are two types of in the aquatic habitat. There are two types of specified habitats there. We have the freshwater habitat, then the marine or salt water. We have these two forms under the aquatic habitat. You have the freshwater, then the marine. Now, the freshwater, you have your lake, your pond, your streams, name them. Then the marine water, the other names are marine, so salt water. So the sea, the ocean. These are two main marine water. Now, organisms that are found in the freshwater are different or might be different from those found in the marine water. Why? Because the freshwater, they are, as the name sounds, they are fresh water. Marine, they are salty in nature, so they have a bit of salt content in them. So freshwater fishes cannot survive in the sea because they would lose too much water to the environment. Now, this statement or this statement here exposes us to the system of hypertonic solution or hypertonic medium and hypotonic medium. Now, over here, the fresh water cannot survive in the sea because it will lose too much water to the environment. So these freshwater fishes, when they are in the salty water, they will lose water. Why? Because the water in their system will leave their system into that hypertonic solution or hypertonic medium, making them flaccid. I know I should be sure you understand the meaning of flaccid. FLACCID. When the organism, the cell has lost water to its environment. So here, freshwater fishes cannot survive because they would lose too much water to the environment. Now, in the opposite sense, or in the other hand, marine fishes placed in a freshwater habitat may become internally flooded, so they absorb too much water. So over here, they don't become flaccid, but they become turgid. So they undergo what we call turgidity. So they would absorb water. So over here explains hypertonic and hypotonic medium. Okay, then the last one. Due to this, different fishes will be habiting at different parts of the aquatic habitats. So due to this, when you go to the aquatic habitat or aquatic medium, organisms or fishes have a particular medium where they find themselves, where they can survive, where they are suited to survive. They don't just go and stay anywhere. They can't stay at a place where they would lose water to the environment, or they would what? Absorb too much water, which would might or might not harm them. So they are adapted to what? To live at different parts in the what? Aquatic habitat. Now, the degree of salinity has no unit or has no instrument to measure them, because this is a saltness or amount of what salt dissolved in water body. So the instrument that you can use is your tongue. You go and taste it. So it has no specific instrument used to measure this. The next abiotic factor is hydrogen ion concentration. I'm not getting any questions. I'm not getting any questions. Hydrogen ion concentration. Hydrogen ion concentration. Hydrogen ion concentration. Now, this is a measure of how acidic or alkaline water is in an aquatic. Is a measure of how acidic or alkaline water is in an aquatic habitat or soil solution. Is a measure of how acidic or alkaline water is in an aquatic habitat or soil solution. Now, this hydrogen ion concentration is also called pH. pH. Now, since no one is talking, let me see if any one of you knows what the full meaning of pH is. So you can send me a chat telling me what the word pH means. pH, what does the word pH means? Okay, so pH is expressed in terms of a pH scale. It has a scale that you can look at. Now, this scale runs from 1 to 14. This scale runs from 1. Okay, so I have one from Osafo Bennett. Osafo Bennett. Okay, I'm waiting for others. Now, this pH scale runs from a scale of 1 to 14. Now, 7 or pH 7 is a neutral point. pH 7 is a neutral point. Then from numbers 7, that is from 7 downwards to 1, tells you increasing acidity. Kelvin, okay, tells you increasing or indicates increasing acidity. And from 7 moving upwards to 14 indicates what? Increasing alkalinity. So the word alkaline, you can put it base. So acid and base. Now, I will show you an image of how this pH scale looks like with conjunction with a universal indicator. Now, this pH can be measured using a universal indicator. Now, this indicator has specific colors on them that is used to indicate whether the substance is an acid or a base. Now, indeed, these same colors indicate if the solution is more acidic than the other, or it's a weak acid or a strong acid. It will indicate everything on the scale for you. Now, it indicates pH range by a range of colors compared to the pH scale. Now, how does this pH influence organisms in their habitat? One, it influences the distribution of organisms because not all organisms can live in an acidic or alkaline condition. Now, it's believed that plants best survive in an alkaline medium. It's believed that plants best survive in an alkaline medium as compared to an acidic medium. Now, not all organisms can survive in not all organisms can survive in an acidic medium. Okay, Nicholas, I've gotten your answer. Then Galaxy J2 Pro. Okay, so not all organisms can survive in an acidic medium. Likewise, not all organisms can survive in an alkaline medium. So it influences the distribution of organisms. So you can have organisms, most organisms in an alkaline medium and most in what? An acidic medium. So this pH or power hydrogen ion concentration tells you the kind of organism distributed in a particular environment or locality. So the word pH for the rest of you is the meaning of the word pH is power of hydrogen. Power of hydrogen. So it's just the concentration of hydrogen in what the particular medium. Okay, so this is how the pH scale is measured using the universal indicator. So as you can see on the scale, there's a wide range of colors there. Now the 0.7, as I said, is the neutral point. So from the 0.7 going downwards to 1 or to 0 measures how acidic what a substance is. So this acidic content starts from 6.9, 6.8, 6.7, 6.5, 6.4, 6.3, 6.2, 6.16. So how acidic a substance is starts from 6.9 to what? To where you can have 0.1. Let me put it that way. Then how alkaline a solution or water is starts from 7.1 to what? To 14. So this is how the indicator looks like. It's universal, using colors, and also using the pH scale is the measure of from what? The 1 to what? To 14. That is what you need to understand about this pH scale measured using the universal indicator. Any questions are accepted, so you can put your questions on board. Okay, the next point or the next abiotic factor is the slope gauge. Okay, okay. I'll attack a message privately. So okay, so let's continue. Nicholas, I'll attend to your question, then move on. Now, slope of land. Now that the name sounds slope of land, so it's just how slopy a land is. Put it that way. How slope land is. Now, slope of land affects the growth of organisms. Slope of land affects the growth of organisms and influences its water, content of soil, erosion, wind, and exposure. Now, when water runs down steep slope, when I say steep, how do I even explain steep? More or less like something is sliding on an angle. So water moving down a steep slope very fast. Much of it may not soak into the soil, hence causing erosion. Now, a greater number of plants grow on a gentle slope than a steep one. Now, the reason why greater number of plants are able to grow well on a gentle slope is that water does not wash away the organisms on their topsoil. Two, when you have plants that they have weak stem, they have weak roots that they cannot be, they can't hold themselves in the soil. That is where these plants they can't survive, because when it rains, it will wash them away. But when you have them on a gentle slope, water will not wash them away, but rather it might soak. Some of the water will be soaked into the soil, and others will be washed away gently without harming the plants. Now, on this steep slope, plants need to be firmly attached, as I already explained, or blown off by the wind. They need to be gently or firmly attached so they don't be blown away by the wind. Okay, now the slope of land is measured with a slope gauge. This slope of land is measured with a slope gauge, and it is measured in degrees.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm trying to attend to. I'm attending to a question being asked.
Okay. Then later.
Sorry. Okay, so let me show you the picture of how the slope gauge looks like. So that is how the slope gauge looks like. Once you can see, it has a meter stick, a drawing pin, a binding tape, and you have a protractor. Then a string to hold a weight, so any form of weight. It can be a small stone. Then you can see someone holding or showing how the slope gauge is held. So you look at an angle, then that angle is measured on the protractor. That angle is measured on the protractor. So Nicholas, you're welcome. So any further questions, you can put them across. Thank you. Okay, so let me go back to the power of hydrogen. Let me explain very well. Now, Nicholas drew my attention to other meaning for the power of hydrogen, the pH, power of hydrogen. Others calling it potential hydrogen. Now, this potential hydrogen, yeah, you can call it potential hydrogen, but the power of hydrogen better explains the meaning of the word pH. The power of hydrogen better explains the meaning of the word pH. So it tells you the number of replaceable hydrogen ions in what? A particular medium. It tells you than the potential. So the power of hydrogen better explains the meaning of what? pH. So you stick to the word power of hydrogen. Okay. The next abiotic factor, we have altitude. Altitude. Now, as I talked about when we're talking about pressure, it is the height of land above sea level. The height of land above sea level. So I want you to have, we just have this picture in mind that you are on a mountain and you can see the sea. So the height of land above the sea level is what we call altitude. Now this altitude affects distribution of organisms because as altitude increases, the temperature and wind speed decreases. Now when you are on the mountain or when you are below the mountain, now the effect of wind doesn't affect you because it changes the course of the movement, the air in motion. Now temperature doesn't really affect you, but rather it takes a new medium. Now this environment affects oxygen requirement of organisms. Now those are the mountain peak or at the peak of the mountain, they tend to have low oxygen than those below. Why? At the base of the mountain, it may be rainforest. That is normally there are trees there, a lot of trees there. A lot of trees at the base, that is at the bottom of the mountain. And at the peak, that is on or mostly at the top region or the uppermost part of the mountain, you only find these small shrubs and bushes, small ones. So when you are traveling or moving in the eastern region and going to the Volta region, you see these mountains, and you see that on top there are some there are trees there. There are few trees there, but when you get to the bottom or below or the base of the mountain, you notice that there are big and many trees around that place. Now, animal community may be different at its base and the peak of the mountain. So those that you find at the base of the mountain are different from those that you find at the peak of the mountain. Organisms that are found at the base of the mountain, that is at the ground level of the mountain, are different from those at the peak of the mountain. Those that are on top of the mountain, organisms there will be different from those that are found at the base of the mountain. Why? Because every organism has its own medium where it can survive or suit best.
Stop taking it.
So that is altitude for you. It tells you which kind of organisms will live at this particular point and which would live at another point.
Ecosystem, ecology.
Now the next one. Okay. Now the next abiotic factor is the carbon dioxide and oxygen concentration. Carbon dioxide and oxygen concentration. Now this measures the amount of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere and the number of oxygen that is absorbed into the body of an organism. So two simple things. Carbon dioxide being released, human beings or living organisms, human beings specifically, animals, releasing carbon dioxide and we taking in oxygen for our survival. So living things use up oxygen and releases carbon dioxide through the process of respiration. Simple terms, when we breathe in oxygen, and when we breathe out carbon dioxide. Now, in addition to this, when green plants photosynthesize, they use up carbon dioxide and release oxygen. So during the process of photosynthesis, these green plants use carbon dioxide in the presence of water, chlorophyll, and sunlight. Then they produce their food, glucose, then oxygen as byproduct. So they give us the oxygen, then we give them carbon dioxide. Now, in simple terms, this respiration, that is we breathing in and out, and plants using the carbon dioxide to produce their own food in the form of photosynthesis are balanced in the world as a whole, so that the amount of carbon dioxide in the air remains constant. So it wouldn't be in a situation that in the atmosphere you have more of carbon dioxide than what oxygen. So it's on a balance. So whilst we are giving out carbon dioxide, then we are also taking in oxygen so that everything will be on the balance. Now again, this one also has no instrument because, as I said, we are doing breathing in and breathing out. Plants are also using it to prepare their own food. Then the last abiotic factor that we looked at is stability and depth of water. Stability and depth of water. Stability and depth of water. Now, stability is the cloudiness of water. Stability is the cloudiness of water. Now, this cloudiness explains whether the water is clear or muddy. Stability is the cloudiness of water. This cloudiness explains whether the water is clear or muddy. Now, whether the water is clear or muddy affects plants and animals living in a particular area or a particular habitat. When the water is clear or muddy, affects them. Now, some organisms require clear water. So let me use fishes. Some fishes require clear water, whilst others tolerate muddy water. Now, the muddy water, as an example, I'm giving mud fish. In Adre, I don't know whether you've seen some before. Now they are normally found in like muddy regions, muddy areas. They are normally acclimatized to a muddy environment. They don't like they don't really like clear environment because they are suited towards a muddy region. Now you can have a particular water body where you find a lot of fishes inside. Now these fishes that you find at a particular region. There are so many. Now these organisms can survive there. There are others that when they join them there, they will not be able to survive because of space. It looks as if uh, in class, when a place, your class is occupied with a lot of people. Now we have students that they are asthmatic, so a little bit of reactions from the environment affect them, so they can't survive there. That is the same mentality that I want to have about this stability in water. Now, an increase or decrease in stability affects organisms according to their level of tolerance. So, as I compare to students in class, we have in water body organisms living in what? There are lots of organisms living in a particular area. Now, we have organisms that they have been spaced out. You find them one in the water. That is how they are suited. That is how they are what they like. That is their tolerance level. That is what they want. You have those that they can't live apart, but they are crowded at a particular what locality. So increase or decrease in stability, that is cloudiness or what clear or muddy region, affects organism according to their level of what tolerance, what they are best suited for. Now, depth of water is important because one, it affects the pressure acting on the surface of an organism, affects the pressure acting on organism. So pressure increases the depth, and organisms are able to live at certain depths according to their level of tolerance of pressure. Then two, it affects the light intensity. Now this is where the last time I explained organisms like the larvae of mosquito, when they you show a light surface on their surface of water, then they move deep down the water to escape. They see it as a form of danger, so as a defense mechanism. Now inside the water, you should know that there are these aquatic plants that they also photosynthesize. So at the point where light is shown, there's light intensity on the water, these plants are able to absorb this light and use to prepare their own food in water. So that these are two most important uh, facts about depth of water. Now, stability is measured with the instrument called the SACCHI disc. The instrument called the SACCHI disc. Now, this is how the disc look like. It's a round object. Then under the object, you have a ball. So when you place it on water, so there's a thread that the man is holding. When you place it on water, it would move down. The round structure with the ball at its end will move into the water down to determine the cloudiness and the depth of water. So this is all factors that affect organisms in their ecosystem or in our ecosystem. So this ends abiotic factors that affect organisms in an ecosystem. Now, any question? Okay. So if there's no question, we are going to end here.